Hello everybody. Oh, I don't know why, as soon as I press record, I just get tired and my nose hurts. Okay, it's been a few weeks, probably 3-4 weeks, since I've actually done anything on any of my projects. It might even be longer than that. Now, according to the YouTube videos, it might not seem that way. That's because, to be honest, I have got such a backlog of videos that there's a good chance that literally there's going to be a video coming out every day for fucking God knows how long. So just to put things into perspective, today I have just uploaded Shelves 97, I think it is. So that might give you some kind of an idea of how off my timing is in reality. So it's been a few weeks since I've done any of my projects. The table was the last thing that I did, and that was I gave that table to my brother, and looks good. He's very happy with it. Asked if he's keeping it, but either way, I did tell him if he's not keeping it I'll have it back, because I'll try and sell it on. You'll have to excuse my nose, because over the last few weeks, I think I spent a couple of weeks of being ill, with a completely blocked nose, couldn't breathe. No, it wasn't corona. I didn't have a cough, I was just completely blocked up. So yeah, that was a pretty rough couple of weeks. And obviously I was helping my little brother with his apartment before he came back from Poland, and that's now done. And then as soon as that finished, I've been helping my older brother moving out of where he's living with his wife and little boy. So I've been busy with other things. But while I've been doing those other things, I've kind of slowly been preparing to restart some of my projects, and also I've ended up with 3 additional projects. One of which I'm going to show. I'm going to show a bit of today, and it's actually going to start. This is going to be video number 1 of that project. So there's this one, which is it's basically a number plate, a number plaque for a house. Not a plaque; it's going to be on a piece of wood. But there's a number of processes to go to that, so I'll get onto that in a moment. Another one is I've been gifted an old antique glass case, about so big, which normally it's not the kind of thing I'd be interested in with having glass on it, but given some of the tools that I've now acquired, it's something that I thought it might be worth having a go, because if I do it up and it looks nice and I want to keep it, then I can put it on my shelves. If I do it up and it looks nice and I don't want to keep it, I can try and sell it. I have no idea if it will sell. I really don't know, but we'll find out. That will be on another video anyway. In addition to that, I've also been gifted another cabinet. Well, not another cabinet. I've been gifted a cabinet. I don't know anything about its history. I don't know how old it is. I've not really been able to have a good look over it. It has got some intricate details on it, which, if I hadn't got the tools that I've got now, which I'll show soon, I wouldn't have taken it on, because the intricate details would have been way too fiddly for me. So I've got a number of things to keep going, and I've still got my rectangular table. But because I've been suffering so much with illness recently, and I'm in a lot of pain, my back is desperately bad. When it came to, okay, what project should we do next? Next, it was going to be the table, until sort of everything started happening with my brothers. So the table for the moment is on a bit of a back burner until I'm feeling a bit physically better. Now I've got to take the table apart, to repair bits on it. So I want to be fully focused on that. So what I'm actually going to do is, focus on this number plaque. So this is going to be a bit of resin work, a little bit like the free range children and dogs wooden resin that I did from that I refurbed from my parents. But this is going to go one stage further, because this time I am actually going to have to physically carve the or engrave or carve, however you want to say it. So my face is hurt, my eyes have been bad recently as well. Sunlight's doing me in. Yeah, I'm actually going to need to carve the pattern. So I've kind of got to prepare for that. So I'll basically show you what it is I'm going to be doing. Now what I've done, admittedly this, I haven't got a printer here unfortunately, so I've got my other brother to print this up. My other brother, I sound like Milton Jones, and my other grandfather. Yeah, so I came up with a bit of a design that I wanted to use, and I emailed him to print off. Now, I was expecting, or I'd set it up to be like 2 copies, one above the other on A4 paper. Now, I don't know whether it's because of the way that it emailed through, or maybe the way Steve did it, but it ended up being 1 copy on A4 paper, and I can't resize it. I mean, I could have gone to reprint it off, but to be honest, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with this size. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I'm interested to see how it'll look. Two, it may make a bit more sense being on a big thing. I think if it was small, if it was sort of that size, and it had the 2 and the stairs, it might be a bit, I don't know, less in your face. I want it to be visible, and so do my brother. Basically, if you haven't realised, that means upstairs. If you ain't worked that bit out, then I'm gonna have to fucking redesign it, aren't I? Now, admittedly, it is up the stairs that way and up the stairs that way, but there's no other doors up the stairs. So once you go up the first bit, there's only one place you can go, and that's to his door. So rather than have the arrow going this way, yeah, I've gone with this design. Now, if my little brother don't like it, tough fucking shit. That's what I'm going with. Now, what I've done is I've got 2 of these, because what I want to do is do a practice run. I want to do 1 practice run and then 1 actual piece. Now, what I've got is a bit of a dirty piece of wood, and this is a very simple, it's just it actually looks like it could have been the end part of one of the shelves that I'd you know what, thinking about it, it is. I bet I cut that off. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, that's the one big piece at the top of the shelf. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut these out and fit them onto the piece of wood so they fit together. And then I will draw around them so that I've got on here an outline of what I want to carve. Then I'm going to try and carve it. Now, one of the things that I noticed when doing my carving work on my headset holder, which I'm still working on, is that I was finding it very difficult to actually do the carving. My hands can't cope with it. So that's taken an extremely long time to do anything with, because it's just so physically difficult for me to do. So what I've ended up doing is going for the right tool for the job. So I've managed to get myself a Dremel, quite a cheap one to be fair, but it is a Dremel, and I got this for the sole purpose of mainly the carving of this, right? However, it can then also be used for doing any of the carvings I need to do, or for example on the cabinet that I've been gifted, intricate sanding, right? So I can really get into and clean out the intricate areas of a piece of wood or a piece of metal, whatever it may be, because that was something that I know I definitely struggled on the first cabinet that I did. The getting into some to the right to the corners or stuff like that was a bit fucking awkward, but hopefully with this that'll solve that issue. Now it's come with a few pieces, but I won't be surprised if I burn through the sanding things on there quite quick. But also it also comes with buffing stuff, so if I have done a little bit of resin work, which I am going to be doing, obviously on this I'm going to be doing resin work, I can polish with this, and it's going to be a hell of a lot easier than using the big orbital sander. So I can polish with this, especially when if I'm doing small, I mean okay that's not tiny, but I may find it easier to polish that with this than with the orbital sander. Okay, what else is there? So yeah, so I'm going to carve out on this piece of wood. I may do a test run with the resin, because I got some blue powder colour, pigment, and black powder pigment, which shouldn't just be a plain colour. It should be much nicer than that, and I want to test that before I actually go and use that on something. So I might try that blue on this. So this is basically test carving with this, and potentially test resin with a colour, which leads me on to another project, and I'll show you what this project is. A while ago I'd mentioned that I was I was putting spare resin into these glass jars, and I was getting a bit annoyed that it was a bit of a waste. And I'd also, by the way, that is still not dry, that can still move, and that's been 2 months. So no, I filled in that, which is the top of a stairs post, but I was using it as a coaster, and I'd decided to fill it in, hadn't I? And he gave me the idea. Well, rather than just wasting resin by putting it into glass jars, I might as well put it in something a bit more useful. So some time ago I got myself these. Now what these are is 2 different shapes of rubber moulds, which can be filled with resin and can set, and then you end up with round coasters and square coasters. So my waste resin is now going to be going on to an additional project, but I'm going to try and take that a little bit further, because there was an idea that I had yesterday. However, unfortunately, the idea nearly ended up in extreme disaster, because I very nearly chopped myself up on a bench saw. Now, what my idea was, that with doing the coasters, yes, I can do the resin coasters, and I've got a few different things that I can put in there to make it look a bit interesting. I've also got a big flat piece of wood that I'm going to try and do a river effect on, which is one of the things that I want the blue powder pigment for, hence testing it on this. But I also had another idea, which was around the back of my dad's workshop is the fallen tree that was chopped up, and in that pile is chopped up logs that happen to be about the size of what you might want a coaster to be. So straight away I was like, well, if I can chop this into slices, I've got instant coasters that I can do a bit with resin on and perhaps do a bit of carving on or whatever it may be. Fucking good idea, Dave. Right, let's do that. So, got this one, chopped one end off, got a nice smooth end, but because of the split that's in the wood, it basically broke off into about 4 different pieces. So I was like, fuck. So I chopped the other end off anyway, and that did exactly the same thing. So I was like, well, okay, it's not the end of the world, is it? I might be able to work around that. Maybe I can do what I've seen people do with much bigger pieces and tables, and I'll get to that in a second. So I then went to chop the end of this one off. Now, because of the shape of this, I didn't clamp this down, and I'll warn you now. I had cut a number of pieces of wood, square pieces of wood, that didn't fit into the clamps, and I went with just holding it. I'm not going to be doing that again, and you should never do it either. To be honest, I pretty much shit myself because I was chopping through this end and a piece of the wood broke off, and the blade pretty much had a reaction so strong that as I was holding this like that and I was pulling the bench saw down, the reaction was so strong that it took the wood like that. Now, I was lucky that as soon as I let go of the power, this jammed the blade, so it didn't go any further. If that hadn't have happened, there's a good chance I'd have lost my arm or my hand. And it was at that point straight away I went, right, okay, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore, we'll stop that. I mean, just to show as well, I mean, that's a fairly straightish cut until that bit. You see how much it's curved? That's how much it took it in that direction in an instant. I fucking shit myself. So I won't be doing that again. I definitely didn't tell my dad about it either, otherwise he'd fucking never let me use the machinery again. But anyway, next time I would have to find a way of clamping it down. But anyway, safety issue over. What I noticed was that this unfortunately has exactly the same effect. Now, there's, off the top of my head, 2 or 3 ways that I could sort that out, and one of them is to, now using a jigsaw and making sure these fuckers are clamped down, would be doing my slicers. They're still going to break off though, but then I may be able to use those pieces. I'll put them away now. I may still be able to use those pieces sort of put together in there and then held in with resin, right? So I can still potentially use that as a bit of an artistic part of it. Another way to do it would be to try and fill those gaps in with resin before cutting anything. Then hopefully when cutting it on a bench saw clamped down, it would cut straight through in slices, keeping the whole thing together. That's kind of the way I'm tempted to go at the moment, whether I use a bench saw or not, but that is one way I'm looking at trying to do it. Another way would be, I mean, just mentioning it the way that I did, basically would mean like cleaning off all of the wood, finding where the split is, and then trying to get resin in there to fill the gaps. I don't think it'd work too well, but it might work well enough. Like with that split, I'd be able to get some stuff in there. But anyway, the other option is to get something that's a little bit bigger than this, some kind of container, like a pop bottle or something like that, put this in it, and then fill the bottle up with resin until it covers the whole of the wood. Right? Once it's hardened and it's dried, we then take the bottle away, basically rip it off, cut it off, whatever, and then we've got one solid piece that can be chopped up, shaped, and we can do whatever we want with it. That one is a lot more work in the after hardened stage because of having to shape it. It wouldn't, well, yeah, it'd be the shape of the bottle rather than the shape of the wood, and I wouldn't want that. So it probably would need to be shaped. But again, I've now got some tools that I can affect that with. So there's a few different things I can try. Now, one thing I will say is that I've got 3 different logs like this. So I've got a slightly bigger one. I've got this one. Now these have got all the bark on and stuff. Now with the carving stuff I've got, I'll be able to take all that bark off on there and quite easily with a carving knife, hopefully. So I've got those 2, and then I've got a slightly smaller one. Now the smaller one would be no use to me because I like to use big mugs. But I've got 3 different pieces of wood, so I may try 3 different ways of doing it. Now one thing I will say is I've only got little bottles of resin. Now I have got some more, but what I've got at the moment, I'm not filling up any bottles. But what I may be able to do is, rather than try doing like a whole log, I may be able to cut it down to a smaller piece and try that. But we'll see. That's kind of like a secondary or a thirdary afterthought, because at the moment any excess resin I've got is probably going to go into initial tests of these, just as they are, or with a couple of stickers that I've got put in with people's names on. But anyway, that's something else. So we'll see how they come along. That needs cleaning now. The wood needs cleaning as well. Now, when it comes to this as well, and I've done a lot of waffling here, but like I say, it's been a long time since I've done any of these videos. One of the things that I'd wanted to do for any of the resin work that isn't in these, alright, so this is a piece of wood that I was thinking of doing river effect on, right? So basically what I'm intending on doing is sanding out basically a wiggly river down here, and then I'm going to fill it with resin, right? And then I'm going to kind of sand it down, polish it down, and then cut this into sections, right? Which will make big coasters, right? That's what this is for. But we've had a problem with resin on big bits of wood before. And I had mentioned that in a way I wish I had put perspex around it or a piece of wood. So this piece of wood isn't perfectly square, bit of a pain. But the main piece of wood that I plan on using for that project has got flat edges. This has got flat edges. So I have a few strips of wood like this, which can now, well, you can see from there, can now go onto the side, right? Which means that I can then put a thicker layer of resin on, and not worry about it soaking in. Or like with this, it is not a flat piece of wood. Well, it won't matter as long as the layer is thick enough to give me a flat surface on the top. So I've got that option. With that though, I either have to screw it on or glue it on. Well, that's where this now comes in handy, the other new toy, the hot glue gun. Haven't tried using that yet, but I will at some point. So I can hot glue these onto here, and because they're squarer edges, it'll be a hell of a lot easier to sort out. But what I have also done is I've managed to get myself a large piece of Perspex for basically doing exactly the same job as this, right? And that is more for potentially things like this that may not have a square edge, got a rounded edge. I might be able to use on those, because with the hot glue gun I can also fill in some edges, and hopefully with the hot glue gun, applying additional heat to the glue will then allow it to melt a bit and come away. That's my concern at the moment, is getting the pieces off without causing too much damage, because if I put that on there and the resin goes up to it, the resin's sticking to it potentially, but we'll see how we get on. There's only one way to really find out for certain, that's to try, and that's one of the things I'm going to do. So yeah, so there's a lot of things that are kind of happening now with this piece. I'm not actually going to try putting a, well, I might try putting a border on it as a test. We'll see. Anyway, so I get rid of pretty much everything else, and now that I've waffled for 27 minutes about a number of different projects that are on the go, I will mention as well, I need to put plenty of this, the outdoor varnish, on this, because this is going to be the post that's going to hold this sign. So that's going to need doing as well. So after all of that waffling, my main project, or my project I'm working on at the moment, is going to be this. So from the next video on, it'll be probably showing me cutting this up, trying to position it, taping it down, drawing around it, and then yeah, seeing how we get on. It'd be interesting, I think. Anyway, right, see you on the next video.